Hi, and welcome to the Phenomenal Reflections podcast. Joining me, thank you for watching. Thank you for continuing to tune into my channel and hear something that I had to say that's dear to my heart. I want to talk about Domestic Violence Month. This month, October, is Domestic Violence Month. And we are diving into some personal topics, some topics that's not talked about or even brought into the forefront or kind of standoffish is something that we don't talk about as melanated beings. But to get started, I want you to follow me first. Follow me on the platforms that I have on YouTube, Spotify, and StreamYard and TikTok. Find me on those channels as Phenomenal Reflections Podcast, and that's Reflections with an S. And I kinda wanna dive into a topic that I was kinda hesitant to talk about, but as I'm guided and protected to talk about, Imma go ahead and dive right into that topic, and I don't want to hold back anything or leave out anything, and to kinda get the community, feedback, you comment on my video down below and let me know, what do you think about it, or do you agree with the things that I'm talking about on this particular show? So we're not gonna be limited to domestic violence all the time, but we're gonna kinda dive into certain topics that lead directly back to domestic violence. And that's something that we don't like to do as melanated beings. So the title of this topic is the importance of talking about family abuse and raising awareness. Let me say that again. I am going to talk about the importance of talking about family abuse and raising awareness. Now, family abuse is, domestic violence, including child abuse, intimate partner abuse, elder abuse is something that's common within our community, or not just in our community by itself, but as a whole, is something that is a broad reach in the United States. But unfortunately, each form of family, abuse comes in many forms, and it can also be something that's characterized into the cycle of abuse. And this is what I wanna talk about. And I was like I said, I was, kinda saying, like, what am I gonna talk about this connecting everything and connecting the dots? So with that being said, the cycle of abuse can often be exposed in many different forms. It could be an adult relationship. It could be, in financial care for an elderly person. And it also can be domestic, you know? So domestic and family violence includes a range of abuse, including economic, physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, towards children, adults, and elders. And domestic violence is something that is kind of difficult to identify, and in many cases, it's go unreported. And most people who identify these type of things when it comes to family is healthcare professionals, people that's already psychologists, doctors, you know, they are the type of people that first encounter or have a conversation with that particular patient about something they may notice or seen or something that they heard and has been reported, so but a lot of times a lot of family members don't like to say certain things because of the lack of support, the lack of acceptance. It could be a family member judging, it could be family member shaming. And I don't know why we do those things as humans, but you know, it happens. Let me just say that it happens. And family and domestic violence are abuse, behavior in which, it could be for individual type of gain and type of control. And I had a family member that participated in this, and I'm gonna say they knew that this what they was doing, but they didn't know the extent of what they was doing, if that kind of makes sense. But the person that was in my family that took care of my grandmother, she knew that my grandmama had Alzheimer's, and this is, you know, actually this was a child of hers, and was taking care of my grandmother and went to where my grandmother lived to do that. And upon doing that, like I said, my grandmama had Alzheimer's, and so she can't do the things that she used to. So this particular person decided if I say, "Let's put your clothes on," or if I say, "Let's go potty," or if I say, "Let's do something," and you're not doing that, and my grandmother would just take her clothes off, and she's in the home doing this. So when she did it, this particular person felt the need to spank my grandmother, felt the need to whoop my grandmother. Like grandmother literally was a child. Don't get me wrong. I hear people say once an adult, twice a child, but there's no reason that a person should be in care of an elderly person and want self gain and power over the situation when knowing good and well that this particular person has an illness. So when they do have Alzheimer's, a lot of times you have to look over certain things. You do have to have tough skin because I've seen certain, ones do get outraged, but that still does not give you a reason to use your hand as a form of, hey, I got control over this situation, and it was very frightening. And I was very upset with this. I didn't learn that this was happening until later on, that this was something that a family member was doing. And I quite was quite embarrassed for who it was. But nevertheless, it happened, and I've seen that, growing up. I've seen that. So I could identify that this what this particular person was really doing. But um as child abuse, I'm gonna say this. It involves a lot of emotional, a lot of sexual, a lot of physical, a lot of neglect, and it can happen. I hear some people say it happen to children that's under the age of 18, but no. It could be a parent that's doing this to a child, somebody that have, the rights, a janitor or somebody that's a caregiver. But when they're doing child abuse and they're putting these certain things out here for children and adults, those are to me the most dearest thing to my heart that I do not want to see happen to people who don't even know sometimes that they're even here, even existing. So children and elderly people is something that I definitely, definitely take to my heart, and I definitely, definitely don't play about. But I'm gonna continue talking about this elderly abuse is something that, you know, is just a failure of an act. Or sometimes it can be intentional act. And like I said earlier in this conversation, that I was aware that she knew exactly what she was doing because she kept doing it and she had did it previously before. So it was something that I identified seeing her do, but as a child, I didn't know that this what this particular family member was doing. So, in my age that I am now, I definitely can identify, yeah, that person did that before, and I'm gonna speak up about it. And this can cause a lot of pain to something that's already we already sorry over the illnesses, and to see that an elderly is being abused, it's just it's sad to even hear. But I'm gonna give you reason abusers need control. They need, or should I say, they have anger management issues. That's the number one thing. And as I begin to break down this uh topic that I'm talking about on this podcast, I was able to identify everything was coming back to me, like it was just coming to me, flowing. So I knew that this was something that I really need to dive in and talk about. So Um, anger management issues was one of the things that this particular person did have, and some people that's out here in the world, she's not the only one, but it's something that people have, and they don't know how to work through it. And as over the weekend, I was taken back and going over a little different things about our ancestors and our blood and everything, and I look how we have been broken down so much as melanated beings, and we have been projected a lot of different things. And some of the stuff didn't even have anything to do with us at all. It didn't even have anything to do with us. And so I remember this weekend I was going to a museum and I was visiting and I was kind of going over a lot of different things. And while visiting there, it was like a light bulb came on to me. And I said, well, seeing this made me look at it everything a totally different way. And this particular slaves, as I visit the community, I mean the museum, these particular slaves were given something that had nothing to do with them. Because for me, it was let me identify how did they become slaves? How did this all start to happen? So as I began to dive deep into this, and I'm gonna give you the name of the museum. The name of the museum is Clotilda. And Clotilda Museum is actually on the outside, well, kinda on, in between Orange Beach and Mobile, Alabama. So, the place is called Africa Town. And so, as I began to go in the museum and listen to the documentary, the reason why these people were slaves was simply because their whoever, owned them prior had a debt that was need to be paid and was not paid. So, therefore, the captain of the ship, he went over there and took these different slaves as a form of payment and began to sell those different slaves. And a lot of those slaves were held captive in the bottom of Clotilda's ship and no food, no running water. And if they did drink water, they drunk it out of a canister and it was like you hit it and pass. So they had vinegar in the water to preserve the water. So it really wasn't even nothing of substance to help them. So, tying all this back to what I'm saying is that battle was something that had nothing to do with neither one of them. Whatever their first slave owner or captain or however you want to look at it, where they were in the harmony. And it was something that he did. And Mr. Meyer is what he took them. So in doing all of this, let me tie this on back. Let me bring it on back. So in doing all of this brought anger upon our people, and we don't have the resource. We didn't have the resource back then that we do now. So it built up anger. So as it began to build up anger, the people that 110 people that was on this ship began to become aggressive with one another. Instead of we thinking in today's time, instead of let me talk to somebody and we all come together and we get down and do dirty what we need to do. Because because for me, it was too many people on the ship for not to be as a unit. But I do understand the things that happened back then. So then within this topic, the abuser need control, there's jealousy, there's low self-esteem, and when I say jealousy, sometimes you have a family member, instead of them supporting you and this is something that I can't really understand. Why do we need to be jealous of one another when you can help that family member and that family member is going to help you in return? But a lot of us don't get that. We don't get it, or you made it to that spot faster before the first person did or before the next person did. So now, oh, she thinks she this and she thinks she that. But that's not how it goes. That's not how it should be as a family unit. So jealousy began to happen and then low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is I'm not where I'm supposed to be. So now I'm jealous about this person. So now I'm angry. You see how the domino effect, it goes and breaks down into that. And it don't even have to be that way, but it's just something like I said earlier on, there has become a cycle of abuse. And we need to fix that, you know, because a lot of people feel inferior. They also feel or have cultural beliefs that they have the right to control their partner, personal disorder or physical disorder, learned behaviors from growing up in a family with a domestic violence sometimes have a tendency of saying, "Hey, we're gonna accept this," or "Hey, this is the only way we know that we can, have control." Now, if you take your mind back and if you think back on The Color Purple, and this is something that I thought about as well before I started the podcast today. Um, a lot of this was projected in front of us. And again, it didn't click. None of this didn't click to me that watching The Color Purple was something that was triggered for us people. Let me say that. And so watching The Color Purple, if you can remember the scene when it's when she said, "You told Hoppo to beat me." And I couldn't understand why would she tell Hoppo to beat her when Mister beat it on her continuously. Why? Because it was a control thing. It was something that was put in her at the age of 16 when she left her home and got married to him. That was the only way that was out of there. Is if I do this, and I do this, then I'll get this and this and this. If I accept this abuse, then I can get this, this, this. But in reality, you still get nothing at all. Just absolutely nothing. So again, watching The Color Purple, I couldn't understand why would she do that. That's just to me, it's just as if I'm allowing my child to be affected by something that affected me. And I'm projecting to them this is the only way out is you allow this to happen to you. And that's kind of scary, and I don't want my children. And I'm praying that our community shouldn't want their children to be in a position like this. And so, you know, they become people that's violent, they become perpetrators of domestic violence, and perpetrators of domestic violence commonly is repeatedly something that's acts of violence with new partners. If I could push you here and I see I can't get away with that, then I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna push them. And if I can get away with pushing them, so now I'm gonna punch them. If I can get away with punching, now I can stab. And everything still boils down to having control over something and thinking that you got power. It's something that they do. Drugs and alcohol does play a role in that, and it helps to not convict them that this is what I should be doing, and which is a crazy thing, but that's what they do. And children who are victim and who witness domestic violence and family violence may believe that violence is a reasonable way to resolve a conflict. And that's why it's so important to teach your children conflict and conflict resolution. They should know that punching is the only way out. They shouldn't know shooting is the only way out. They shouldn't know that. You know, Teach them how to resolve things. And, male is the dominant thing here. Not saying that women don't or that women do not learn or equal up to the same thing because they do. But with scientific facts and findings, male is the key role here with domestic violence and family violence because it's just the way it is. It's men being the head of the home. Again, power struck, you know? So females who witness domestic violence, as children are more likely to be victimized by their spouses. While females are often the victim of domestic violence, gender roles can be reversed. Like I said earlier on, it definitely can be reversed. And with that being said, this is the topic that I choose for today. I believe next week I'm going to talk about child abuse. And I think diving into that topic is going to be brutal. And I feel like with that topic, I need to do more of an series because child abuse is something that really. kind of tugs at the heart because again, children are innocent. So I thank you for listening to this podcast and then tuning in to me and hearing everything that I have to say concerning family abuse. And if you feel like you want me to dive a little bit deeper into this topic, go ahead and email me. You can email me at phenomenal reflections with an S 2024 at gmail.com. Or if you don't want to email me, you can text me at 901-501-5456 and I will respond back to you in the order that I did receive it. However, I don't want to close out the show without saying this month again is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The color is purple. Kind of, I know October is something for breast cancer month, but domestic violence is something that is always swept up under the rug. So I want to continue to announce that that is really what's going on this month. So I also want to, before we leave, I'm going to talk about National Domestic Violence Hotline. That number is 1-800-799-7233. If you know anybody that's in a domestic situation or need help or don't have the voice to speak, call that number. They're going to direct you into the right direction. Please call that number. Don't feel like that you in this alone because we are out here to help you. We're out here to be there for you and be the voice for you. There are some things that are in place when you call this line where everything can be remain anonymous, where you can have housing anonymous, a whole nother name, all of that. So don't feel like that nobody's listening, nobody's paying attention, nobody's watching, nobody's hearing, nobody's feeling. So don't feel like that. Call this number 1-800-799-7233. And if you're LGBT community, you can reach out to the Trevor Project, which is 1-866-488-7386. Again, this is for LGBT community because we all need this, not just certain ones. And if you're in a domestic situation and you don't know how to get out and you're legally married, reach out to the womenlaw.org and they're going to help provide you with the necessary step by step to complete everything you need to complete far as having children, far as being married, far as how to dissolve and remove yourself from the situation legally. So again, it has been an honor and a pleasure of talking with you guys. I love you and see you on the next show. Bye bye for now.